I don't know how that works. We're just missing one speaker, so we're just going to wait a few minutes. Otherwise, we're going to look for volunteers to fill the slot.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all in the ballroom as well as online. Welcome back to APAC DNS Forum 2025 Day 2. And we hope to continue our interesting and delightful topic today. And to start our Day 2, we will now have a plenary on WSIS+20 review, preserving our inclusive internet. This plenary will discuss important aspects of the internet that came out of WSIS process, such as the multi-stakeholder model of the internet governance, and examine potential impact of the WSIS+20 review to the APAC region. And let's welcome our section moderator, Ms. Teresa Whitehart, Senior Vice President, Global Domains and Strategy of ICANN, and also our panelists to join her on stage. And Mrs. Whitehart, the floor is yours.
Is that working? Excellent, excellent, fantastic. I know we have some elevator issues, which might cause some delays, so we'll look forward to others joining as we come along. So thank you everybody for being here. Before we kick off and I do some introductory remarks, I actually wanted to ask everybody to introduce yourselves. And we have a really great panel that's covering a spectrum of representation. And it's an opportunity for us to have a really good dialogue around some of the challenges and opportunities more generally. But before I kick off with the introductory remarks and the questions, perhaps I could ask everybody to introduce themselves. Jacob, why don't we start with you?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Yaku Dutoy. I'm the UNESCO representative to Nepal and formerly the Chief of Section Universal Access to Information Digital Inclusion, and it's under that hat that I'm sitting here today. Thanks.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Nico Cavallero. I'm the GAC chair and the board liaison. I'm the one in charge of dealing with government relationships, as I said before, as the liaison with the board, and I'm in charge of the bad jokes also within the board. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'm Dan E. Koo. I'm the CEO of WSIS. WSIS is the Global Alliance of Tech Industry Associations, representing 80 countries and economies around the world. Here in Vietnam, our member is Vinasa, for example. And we have 8 platforms that include the World Congress on Innovation and Technology that has been around for 47 years. I look forward to speaking with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Chung. I'm the Vice President for Policy for .Asia organization. .Asia is the registry operator for the top-level domain .Asia, and we actually have a mandate to promote internet adoption in the Asia-Pacific region. I'm really happy to be here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Akinori Maimura from Japan, JPNIC, Japan Network Information Center. I am at JPNIC serving as the Chief Policy Officer to take care of the technical community policies, IP addresses, domain names, kind of policies, and then some other activities. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And if I could go online to Ian, thank you for joining us remotely.
G'day, my name's Ian Sheldon. I'm the Director of Internet Governance in the Australian Government Department of Infrastructure. I'm one of the current GAC Vice Chairs working alongside Nico at ICANN, and my team will also be leading the Australian Government's engagement in the WSIS+20 review. Sorry I couldn't join you all here in Hanoi, but very much looking forward to a robust discussion here today. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ian, for joining us remotely. So before we kick it off with some questions, just some general observations around what we want to talk about here. The World Summit on Information Society, as you know, is up for the 20-year review. And that includes, of course, the discussions around the renewal of the Internet Governance Forum. But the conversation around the internet space isn't new to any of us. In fact, the only reason that we can sit here and be here together and talk about the issues of this past week is because we have a process for internet policy that allows and enables everybody to participate. And that's an important aspect of designing policy or regulations or evolution and development that actually is scalable and can function. One has to figure out those kinds of solutions. And so in this discussion here, we'd like to talk a little bit about what is happening as we go into the WSIS+20, what is happening with regards to issues that are important for the region, and how do we enable a continued discussion that avoids fragmentation, avoids silos, and affords us the opportunity to continue to evolve the internet in a constructive way that enables everybody to be online. Clearly, the role of the technical community is important, but also the role of governments and businesses and civil society is absolutely essential. And those are the aspects we do need to help reflect. We did organize a pre-event webinar on the topic in April, and so I know there was a conversation around that. But with that, I think I'll turn it over and start asking our panelists some questions. So with that, we're going to focus in the first part around the WSIS process and the significance, and importantly, the significance for the region in particular. So perhaps, Nico, I could start with you as GAC chair. In just 3 minutes each, or whatever the timing is. I've been told quick timing aspects, so we can allow some conversations. Tell us from your perspective, why is the WSIS+20 important? From your perspective, both as government, but as GAC chair and for the region.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and thank you for the invitation. So before we go on, is there any way to turn up the Teresa's volume a little bit here on stage? Because I can barely hear. No. If they can turn up the volume here on stage when she speaks.
I'll talk louder.
Oh, all right. So that would be good. So thank you again. So, and I want to make sure I take a look at my notes and my talking points in order not to digress. So as the GAC chair, I can say that the WSIS+20 review, excuse me, is I would say a pivotal moment for global digital cooperation. So as we reflect on 2 decades, right, of progress since the World Summit of Information Society, the WSIS, this review is not merely a retrospective exercise. It is, I would say, a collective recommitment to an inclusive digital future. There are 3 things I want to point out in that regard. First is that the WSIS+20 review should reaffirm the multi-stakeholder model as the cornerstone of internet governance. This model has enabled governments, the private sector, civil society, and technical communities to collaborate in shaping a global internet that balances innovation with accountability. And there are many examples we've been looking at during this week. So while differences persist, of course, such as the nuanced views among the 184 GAC members within ICANN, or the ITU-aligned priorities of some nations. You know, we totally understand that. These debates are, you know, in my opinion, a testament to the dynamic nature, you know, of governance in a very rapidly advancing digital ecosystem or landscape. The second point I wanted to point out at this time is that this review is a critical platform to address emerging challenges, from cybersecurity to digital divides. Here in the APAC region, with, you know, with its diverse economies and technological trajectories, basically, you know, the APAC exemplifies both the opportunities and complexities, right, of this moment. So I guess that by engaging proactively, we can ensure that regional priorities, like just to give an example, you know, bridging connectivity gaps, right, and safeguarding digital rights, on the other hand, are, you know, integrated into global frameworks. And finally, you know, the WSIS+20 is an opportunity to strengthen bridges between competing visions, whether reconciling the ITU's state-centric approaches, you know, with multi-stakeholder principles, or addressing BRICS nations' calls for you know, a more equitable governance architecture. The beauty of this process is that it fosters dialogue, and I really think that's a key point. So for APAC, you know, leadership means championing, you know, pragmatic solutions that respect sovereignty, while at the same time advancing shared goals like interoperability and trust. I don't want to make this too long, so to wrap up, you know, I would say that the WSIS+20 is not about uniformity, but rather it's about unity in diversity. So, you know, I would say let's seize this moment, you know, to reaffirm our commitment to an open internet that is good for all parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you. I think those are really good observations. It's not uniformity, it's actually the diversity of it that makes it successful. Can you hear me okay? Is that louder? Is that better? Okay, good, good. Jaco, can I turn it over to you for the next question? And I know that we just had the UA Day yesterday in the partnership with UNESCO, and that's actually an example of some of the good dialogue over the years. But with regards to UNESCO as one of the UN bodies that's also facilitating the WSIS action lines, can you share with us a little bit around the accomplishments that you've seen over the past 20 years? And then also specifically, how does it relate to this region?
Thank you so much. UNESCO is not only co-facilitator, but also responsible for 5 action lines. So I won't dwell into all of them, but maybe I can give you just as a hint of some progress and also how it relates to this region. And the first one that I would like to refer to is Universal Access to Information, Action Line C3, where the concept of access to information is a rights-based approach now, which was not the case when it originally was designed as an action line. And within this region, there are 27 countries that have access to information laws and that are implementing these laws, but there's still some way to go in recognizing this. In terms of action line C8, which shows on the promotion of multilingualism and local content, there has also been more and more interest in multilingualism, and UNESCO has piloted more interest in this regard through its 2003 recommendation on multilingualism in cyberspace, where we have looked at this recommendation through the prism of new concepts such as universal access to, universal acceptance through language technologies and others. The uptake in the region is not as profound as at least the Latin American region, But there is some interest in terms of the question related to more digital content and more languages in cyberspace. There's also interesting initiatives to look at specifically input devices such as keyboards that should facilitate also new content development and to make it more agile to make sure that the people can have more digital content. We also have now on the plate the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Again, the uptake in terms of digital empowerment and indigenous languages is not that fast within the region, but there's some interesting initiatives in Nepal and Philippines and elsewhere. And lastly, maybe one point that I want to highlight, UNESCO has been championing also the multi-stakeholder internet governance approach that has just been mentioned. And I think this approach is more and more relevant as the question related to the internet is not only within the tech companies and governments, but is a bigger approach. In this regard, we have the UNESCO Internet Universality Indicators, of which a multi-stakeholder, the M in Rome, the indicators, is one of the principles that need to be respected. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, you really highlight that it actually takes everybody at the table to be successful in what's happening. And certainly with multilingualism, it's not just the demand, but the ability to supply it and support it from a government. Yeah, thank you. Dan, let me turn it over to you. WSIS has been a longtime participant in the business community. And tell us a little bit from your perspective and your members in particular, the contribution to playing a role in the WSIS process. Business is an important stakeholder at the table, and we'd love to hear that. Thanks.
Thank you, Theresa, and thank you, ICANN, for this invitation to be here. So WSIS has primarily been involved in, I think, 4 action lines through investment, innovation, and implementation. Our members in 80 countries and economies have been involved in areas such as infrastructure development. I think that's critical. Obviously, data centers that are built. Even amongst the members that are here today, the ones that are involved in building the and creating the access pipelines, I think is an important part of that. But beyond those, I think our involvement through the platforms that WSIS has. So for example, our signature platform, the World Congress on Innovation and Technology, the WCAT, I think I recall the one in Amsterdam in 2010 did a WSIS+5 review back then. So that was as an example of the participation that our members have been taking part in. Beyond that, I think in the areas of infrastructure, data science, and entrepreneurship, I think that's a big one because through business, through entrepreneurship, not only jobs created, but opportunities are built as well as wealth is created. So today, you look at the companies on the S&P 500, significant portion of that actually comes from the tech industry because we are the engines of growth in so many parts of the world. I think then there is policy involvement as well that David Olive of, I think he's retired from ICANN, was on our board for many years. So areas of policy development, these days we're very concerned about 2 priorities. One is on trade, obviously with the tariff war and concerns on not just goods, but now potentially shifting to services. I think the latest salvo that was fired was on tariffs on Hollywood movies. So it is not a far reach to then for that to shift into technology services. including things that we've taken for granted, that are digital goods and digital services, internet subscriptions. It is not that far away. In fact, we did a scenario planning exercise where we considered the uncertainty. One axis is from the extension of tariffs from goods onto goods and services. And plus, the global approach, is it a fragmented form of approach or a coordinated one? In one of these scenarios, is obviously not a good scenario that we came up with, is what I would call the splinter net. Not the internet, but the splinter net. So imagine if you have a battle and it's fragmentation, is splintered. And I think that is obviously a fear for all of us when the multi-stakeholder model collapses, and then you get into that kind of situation. So I said policy, coming back to that, use cases are critical. In fact, yesterday I asked a question with regards to a potential shift from inputs to outcomes. So use cases, I think, would drive that. I think that's critical as well. Talent development, again, a very important part of that WSIS process, because not only is talent required for the jobs, but it creates income and it lifts people from poverty. So, and finally, investments, whether it's domestic, international, and how that flows, I think is critical. So I'll just rest at that. Thank you.
You've given us a lot to think about on that. I think what you've highlighted is there's actually the potential to put at risk the service and business opportunities that we've benefited from if we don't keep an eye on the ball, as you say. And it's not only about policy decisions, but it's also areas around taxation or tariffs or other things that could put impediments on where we are. So thank you. Thank you. That's more food for thought there. Ian, if I could turn over to you, and from your observations, what would failure of the WSIS+20 put at risk, if I could put it that way? Or what would success look like from your perspective? And what do you observe that the 2 or 3 aspects are that would be absolutely essential to try to preserve out of the WSIS+20, if you had a wish list to encourage everybody to advocate for? Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Therese, and thanks for the opportunity for me to share some of my thoughts. I think it's already been alluded to in some ways here by some of the other speakers, but fundamentally we are here at an internet conference, and so I think one of the greatest risks we do face is potentially a weakening of the global network of networks that we know as the internet, and this would undoubtedly be harmful to key issues like digital inclusivity and digital transformation. We may see communities cut off from the global community. Free flow of information would be hampered, and we start to go back to a time before we could share information near instantaneously across the globe. The world becomes smaller, and in doing so, it becomes harder for us to help each other, whether that's country to country sharing of knowledge and know-how, or the fact that global markets may no longer be in reach for whole economies, or the simple ability to connect to others like yourselves online. All of these things, from trade to economy to social cohesion, become impacted. So I do paint quite a dire future state, and one that comes about should the internet as we know it cease to exist. But I also want to note here that these effects will not be instantaneous, as the WSIS process provides quite important institutional guardrails, but does not play a direct role in the technical management of the internet. But when those guardrails are removed, it becomes easier to undermine the current model of the internet and make room for new architectures and new governance systems to chip away at the current model. We see a gradual slide into an internet that perhaps we don't want, and eventually an internet that potentially becomes globally fragmented. that's quite a hard spot to come back from. So this brings me to the two key aspects that I think must be preserved through the WSIS review, and which are vital to safeguard against the threats to the internet. No surprises, but I think they've already been alluded to by some of our speakers here today. The first of those is the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. This system that means that everybody has a role and a voice in the governance of the internet. The existing references in the current WSIS framework are fantastic, and they should be safeguarded. But I also think this process is an opportunity to build and strengthen some of those references. The Net Mundial principles provide an excellent roadmap to show what that means, what multi-stakeholderism really means in a little bit more detail. So I think this is an excellent opportunity to really demonstrate that the multi-stakeholder model is and will continue to be the best system for governing the internet. And second, the WSIS framework provides for the Internet Governance Forum. The IGF has been one of WSIS's great successes, providing a talking place to discuss crucial internet challenges and organically giving rise to a global network of local and regional initiatives as well. The IGF's mandate should be renewed and made permanent, but we should also take this opportunity to set about finding ways to improve the IGF through more stable funding to allow for more focused discussion and greater impact, as well as hopefully a mechanism to make use of and better integrate with that network of national and regional initiatives. So to my mind, this combination of a robust system of governance coupled with a dedicated forum for open discussion and inclusive discourse on internet and digital matters are two critical factors I think will help stave off any long-term challenges and help guide us away from some of those more dire or less desirable outcomes. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. And I really like how you use the term guardrails, because that's really what it's about, and retaining the guardrails in a way that one can move amongst those and evolve as we need to, including for the Internet Governance Forum, which I think would also benefit from evolving. Jennifer, over to you as a co-person on the MAG, but in your role and experience with everything else. Based on one of the aspects that Ian had referred to, if the multi-stakeholder model was to be replaced by another model, whether it was purely business-led or purely government-led or some other model whatsoever, what would be the risk in real terms from your perspective and from your observations and experience, and what would the world look like?
Thanks, Teresa, for that. And I'm glad I'm coming after Ian because he painted the dire picture. I'm going to try to make it a little more real, maybe a little bit of a thought exercise. I like that Ian mentioned that having this, not having the MSM, the multi-stakeholder model, the process of looking at governing the aspects of the internet itself can lead to siloing, can lead to fragmentation. And he also mentioned the Net Mundial principles. There was a Net Mundial +10 last year as well, where they looked at guidelines on actually measuring what this actually means. What does multi-stakeholder really mean in terms of processes? So one thing that is actually quite real is if one stakeholder leads or one stakeholder kind of just top-down decides all these things, there will be a very pronounced power imbalance, power asymmetry. And what does that actually mean? So instead of a seat at the table where we discuss shared interests, shared goals, especially to do with a global resource such as the internet, there will be stakeholders outside the door, knocking and not coming in. So I'd like to think about a little bit more. You mentioned government-led or private sector-led. I think there is a feeling generally right now with the global, political situation that there are pushes for regional and national legislations. Very luckily for us in the internet industry, especially as a registry operator as well, currently the way that the process and the way that the policies are made are still in a multi-stakeholder fashion where real technical concerns are listened to before legislation, regulation are really pushed through. I think ICANN does a really good job looking at the regulations that come down that could impact this. Now you flip over and think about, okay, what happens if civil society is locked outside of the room, not have a seat at the table, outside of the room? Their expertise is very varied and diverse as well. The way that we look at human rights impact assessments on different policies coming down, especially relating to the internet, special things that they look at, especially child rights organizations, the impact on children's rights or CSAM as well, that would not be actually included in the contemplation of the structure and the framework of how legislation comes down. Ultimately, I guess the map or the painting at the end, you'll see very disparate things. It won't be cohesive. And the result is, we will be the ones actually suffering for it. There's no holistic consideration of all these different aspects before it comes down. One thing I also want to point out is the internet itself is a reflection of how we come together. Coordination is inbuilt in the entire history of how this network of networks was built. So for us to look at it as changing the way or the DNA or the nature of it, I think that's very antithetical to how this global resource, this network of networks, this communication tool that enables global trade and digital economy to flourish, especially in the APAC region, that is absolutely, against the nature of how we feel it is. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I like how you make the reference. It is really the DNA of how the internet has evolved over the years. And we have a fluctuation of different stakeholders that become involved as it becomes more relevant to our society. So I like how you phrase that. It's really good. Akinori, you have vast experience in all of these discussions and years of history of the absorption of the DNA into these processes. Of course, the multi-stakeholder process, like any other, isn't perfect. And from that standpoint, where do you think one could have improvements? It might have, as it's evolving over the years, how could it continue to improve to scale to what we have today?
Right.
I can turn it to you.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is a really hard question. And then WSIS+20, which is the theme of this session, is the UN process, the member states' responsibility. And then we at the technical committee is responsible for the coordination of the global internet infrastructure. Then we are doing that by the multi-stakeholder approach. Therefore, multi-stakeholder must be responsible for our coordination of the internet infrastructure. It is somehow philosophical. Then I am actually striving with that. And then what I did for this week, throughout this week, is a little bit a very good example for that. I actually brought the Japanese publishers industry to the contracted party summit, where for them to have some bilateral meeting and then experience the ICANN's community. And then that was really, really great opportunity for them to know about how the multi-stakeholder approach is working. So they actually have been suffering from the manga piracy. That we are concrete example of the problem. And then they are doing the multiple approach to address that by through contacting the CDN to identify the users or law enforcement or the court decision. And one of the major approaches to identify the piracy operator is the registration data from the which held by registrars. Then they actually had some the bad perspective on what ICANN has been doing, because often the registration data is inaccurate. Then they often blame me because I have been working for the ICANN board. Then what I try to do is to have them understand how the ICANN process works. And then that's actually, ICANN's multi-stakeholder approach, and then a community member themselves need to do by themselves to approach the other stakeholder to address the problem and then seek the consensus approach to address the problem. So for the technical committee to responsible to our for our power is somehow to have the multi-stakeholder committee all responsible for our mission. So this is a really difficult for us. Then my effort this week is to bring them to here, to have them understand, better understand what ICANN is doing here, and then how they themselves can act throughout the multi-stakeholder process to address their own problem, their own. So in this way, we need to embrace the many other stakeholders to be engaged in our own process, and then to better be responsible as the community for our mission. That's my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akinori. Thank you. So we've heard quite a bit about why this is an important process more generally. We're now going to pivot to participation. We talk about participation, we talk about engagement, we talk about being aware of all the issues and being present and involved. But what does that actually mean? And how does one actually go about that? So I'm going to do a quick 2 minutes to everybody. A heads up to the audience. I have one more quick round of questions, and then we're going to take questions from the floor. So start thinking about it. Let me start with you, Nico. From the round of discussions, based on the conversations, do you think we're ready to participate? And if so, what does real participation mean from you, from a government perspective?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Teresa. So the short answer would be no, at least as regarding, government participation. That would be like, the short answer. But, in general, I think the WSIS+20 process is a shared opportunity, to, as I said before, to reaffirm our commitment, as we always say, to a collaborative future. While the ICANN community has made, I would say, commendable strides, right, in fostering dialogue, real participation, demands more than presence. In my humble opinion, it requires, basically meaningful engagement, as we always say, when we have GAC meetings, meaningful engagement from all stakeholders, very especially those facing, let's say, systemic barriers. Hello? Again, given the fact that 3 is my favorite number, I would like to point out, 3 layers of readiness. The first one being progress, the second, to address the challenges, and the third, opportunity. So in terms of progress, I can share with you, I can say, basically that many governments and organizations here in the APAC region and beyond, of course, are actively shaping WSIS+20 priorities, reflecting in general the MSM strengths. That's on the one hand. So progress has been made. On the other hand, there are challenges, of course. Some regions and countries, particularly in the global south, so to say, face hurdles, not due to indifference, but rather, I would say, competing realities. For example, technical expertise gaps, limited commercial incentives, like for example, perceived low relevance, of new GTLDs to local economies. That's a truth. That's a reality, right? And I would say divergent resource allocations. Again, prioritizing broadband access over internet governance debates. Those are things that can sideline participation, which in some cases, in some regions of the world is what is actually happening, right? And finally, the third point I wanted to mention this morning is that real participation, means tailoring engagement, especially when we talk about governments, right? For instance, aligning WSIS+20 discussions with national digital agendas, right? Such as, affordability, local content, or cybersecurity, can very much bridge divides, again, in my humble opinion. So, and again, I don't want to make this too long, but to address these challenges, we must innovate. Capacity building, partnerships, regional translation of global topics, and, very important, incentives, that would resonate with diverse priorities. In other words, let's turn WSIS+20 into a platform, right, where every voice, advances not just as global vision, but more like local progress. So, and again, one final thing I wanted to point out is that inclusivity is not just a checkbox. It's I would say it's the foundation of a more realistic, as we always say, digital future. So I could go on, but let me stop there.
You've given us a lot to think about on the participation side. Jen, over to you. For this region, what does it mean to participate in the process? We need to be sure that from a global level, we're hearing from everybody with regards to these dialogues. So over to you, and then we'll go over to Akinori.
Thank you, Teresa. And thank you, Nico, for supplying us first with the buffet of issues that I can pick and kind of like hone in on, especially for APAC region. I really like that you mentioned systemic barriers. There is significant systemic barriers, especially for APAC. And I'm going to tie it back to what Jacko mentioned earlier too. APAC is global majority in terms of the sheer number of population in the world, and also the diversity of languages. Everything we're doing right now on the stage, we're speaking in English. The negotiations, all of that will be happening in the 6 UN languages as well. But for Asia Pacific, not only is there the need to actually have meaningful participation, but the way to meaningful participation means real understanding of what the issues are, understanding what the risks would be if the process goes awry, and also being able to articulate what Asia Pacific really thinks. And Asia Pacific is not homogenous. Each of the different countries, the nationalities, the jurisdictions, and cultures, they have their own issues that they really need to voice out. So that's the first thing. Being able to have meaningful participation means a true understanding of issues, understanding of the risks, and then being able to articulate what it is that you need from this process. So with that, some opportunities for, I guess, APAC community to try to contribute. I think right now for people who really follow the WSIS+20 processes do understand, okay, we now have our co-facilitators, Kenya and Albania, they are appointed. We now know that there are going to be certain milestones in the rest of the year before the end of the year in December, where there are opportunities for community, different stakeholder groups to actually have consultations. It is now on us to actually make use of these opportunities, both for, now I'm talking about technical community, and also for the general populace of Asia Pacific. How can you actually go to these? The first thing is, of course, in ICANN land, there is the government engagement group team, and they actually pay good attention to what is happening, distilling the information into bite-sized, I guess, documents for people to understand. And then there is the network of actually delivering this information to the community to understand, okay, I can go to this webinar and understand more. I can go to this consultation opportunity and actually voice out, things that I think after I think about, what it is I really want to express towards this input. The second one is the national, regional youth initiatives. I think that some of us has already mentioned it, alluded to it. These are actually grassroots initiatives that sprung up quite organically and spontaneously around the world. It makes up a large part of the Internet Governance Forum ecosystem. There is now, I think, 176 plus initiatives dotted around the globe. Now in APAC specifically, there is the regional ones with the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, but also many different national IGFs. And I'm also very proud to say a proliferation of youth initiatives here in the region. The youths of APAC, ASEAN as well, are really interested to know what it is that will impact them. They are the digital natives. They really like to have a say in this digital landscape that they will go into. Right now, there might be students and youths, but they're going into, contributed to the digital economy. So they would like a say at the table too. And there's also coalitions that are either, stakeholder group concentrated or kind of cross-stakeholder group. There is the technical community coalition for multi-stakeholderism, always a mouthful. So what they are is a group of technical operators that really, govern and manage parts of the critical infrastructure of the internet. People like .Asia, who is a registry operator. There are registrars. A lot of people actually in the room also are part of this. And they really concentrate on, the multi-stakeholder model really allows us to continue to manage the internet, continue to provide an open, interoperable, secure, and free internet for the global population. And these are the things we care about. And then finally, there is a whole constellation of informal, semi-formal, formal kind of coalitions and groupings across the stakeholder groups that are really also working towards, first educating what the issues might be, the risks, and then finally writing open letters, writing open papers, and participating in the different inputs. So I'm sure if we have, ICANN can probably provide a list of, opportunities for people to do that. And I think that is really important for APAC particularly to take advantage of.
Thank you. It's a whole list. It's a kitchen cabinet of things that we could be undertaking. Akinori, similar question over to you. Participation and what would that actually look like and mean?
All right. I'd like to talk about the technical committee, but all done by Jen, and I'd like to focus on my private sector. And then, yes, we are now approaching to the WSIS+20 process, but we had previously we had the Global Digital Compact process, and then I found that in the GDC, the member states, I found the huge expectation from the member states on the private sector. And then actually the private sector is driving the economy by the technology, for example, AI, for example, data. And then the GDC has a lot of expression and then the description about the data governance. All of them are driven by the private sector. So private sector people need to be fully cognizant about what is the expectation from the member states on the WSIS+20 outcome, and then whether it will be satisfactory or it will be meeting to the capability or capacity by of the private sector. That is really important to match the expectation from the government sector to the private sector, and of course private technical committee has some power and capacity capability, and we are somehow expected from the other stakeholder. The matching of that kind of the expectation is really important to have one outcome document be successful for the future. So that's my point for here. And then Asia Pacific region, we have a lot of the diversity of the culture, yes, as you said. And then it is one of the themes for the WSIS+20. So I am really expect from the Asia Pacific committee will be the championing that kind of aspect of the WSIS+20. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are really good observations. Ian, over to you to bring the discussion a little bit further into the region in relation to governments or IGOs. How is it best to prepare for meaningful participation in these discussions?
Thanks, Teresa. There are a couple of things I can recommend to prepare for what I think will be quite a complicated process. And I think Jen has already alluded to some of these things, but I think the most important thing to do is be clear on what the process is likely to cover. Look at the action lines, become familiar with the context and contents of the WSIS process. And then this goes almost without saying, but work out what's important. The review gives us an excellent opportunity to fine-tune and adjust the way in which digital governance occurs across the global and the UN system. Let's work out what's important to us. Focus in on the things that will bring material change to your communities. I think there is a great risk here in the negotiations in and around the WSIS process that this convocation becomes mired in ideology and rhetoric. Arguments about the future of the internet are of course vitally important, but the WSIS process is much broader than just the internet. I think we fully need to understand that there is a real opportunity here to put norms and expectations in place to usher in a more effective global system that addresses real world and digital and connectivity challenges. 2.6 billion still remain unconnected. Focused and proactive discussion through this process gives us a real and genuine opportunity to address these needs. So let's not get sidetracked and let's really focus on the things that will make the most impact for those of us who are still to reap the benefits of the digital age. And the best and easiest way to do this from a government's perspective is to lean on your communities. Reach in, work through multi-stakeholder processes, and talk to the communities who are going to be impacted by this. Here in Australia, we are trying as best as we can to run our preparatory processes through a multi-stakeholder approach. We are co-designing our negotiating points with our local community. We are being as open and transparent as possible. We in the government are sharing as much of our thinking with our community, testing it, iterating, working to draft up approaches and strategies. And then we're also looking as much as we can to reach out across the region. And I think my final point here to the APAC region is, as others that have said, we grapple with quite unique issues here in our region, but we are stronger as a group. So once you've worked through what's important, you've worked out your general orientation, let's work as a region to work out what are those common points, and how do we build coalitions and work together to help each other navigate through this process. It is complex. New York and Geneva are certainly a long way from Hanoi and Canberra. So when we do come to those negotiations, how do we share some of that burden and how do we help each other through this process? I think there's a lot of value in finding those coalitions, those talking points. And once we as a region have worked out what's important to us, let's compare our notes to the other regions. I think we'll be surprised at how many common points there are between the APAC region and many others, and find those common ground to make a material impact to those who are still left behind in a lot of this digital age. Thanks.
Thank you. And your observation of Geneva and New York are far away, and it does reiterate why it's important to have communication about what the successes and examples have been, and how one can benefit from those for what needs to be addressed moving forward. Jaco, I'm going to turn it to you. If you had a crystal ball, what would UNESCO's hope be for a good outcome?
Thank you. I think that we have to take into account a new narrative where we have the Global Digital Compact, we have the 12 commitments of the Secretary General, we have terms such as global digital goods, we have emerging technologies, AI, blockchain. So these are new realities that we need to take into account. But by doing that, we have to reaffirm the human rights-based approach for digital futures. Privacy, right to information, right to education, these are elements to put on the table more firmly. Secondly, we talked about the importance of the multi-stakeholder model. This should be reaffirmed, make sure everybody is there. The Global South, specifically the IGF forums, are very important forums in order to make sure the Global South and others are there. Young people, indigenous communities, people with disabilities, these are the multi-stakeholderism that we are looking at. Then I think bridging the digital divides, they are still unconnected people, but we also need to make sure that people have the right digital skills in order to navigate and use these new technologies. We also have to reach out to regions that are still grappling with connectivity. I think of small island states, specifically the Pacific and others. These are realities that's far from New York and Geneva that needs to be taken into account. My second last point is on safeguarding against online harms, misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, these gender-based violence online. These are realities for many people, and that needs to be taken into account. And last but not the least, of course, local and indigenous knowledge systems need to be reflected online so that our diversity and richness is also present on the internet.
Thank you. That's quite a lot to get out of this. We'll work on that. Dan, over to you with regards to what is the tech industry's hope and wish out of a digital future beyond WSIS+20? And then we're going to pivot actually to questions, so everybody get ready for that. So Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Theresa. I want to reach out and connect with Akimori-san, who's talked about managing expectations, and especially that interconnect between the public sector and the private sector. I think that's important because certainly that's a part of the multi-stakeholder model. And I want to bring in the user community as well. And so I think the process has the opportunity, or gives us the opportunity, to not just do a review and examine the achievements, pat ourselves on the back, and then warn of dangers to come. But I think there's an opportunity for transformation, because it is not just another 20 years to come. It's not just another billion users, but what kind of transformation can we imagine? And for that, I want to suggest that there are potentially three strategic shifts. First, to get towards an outcome-based approach, not just an input-based approach. First, in the area of government, can we shift from infrastructure first to impact first? So I think governments and public sectors tend to look at technology, ICTs, as let's build that infrastructure. And I don't blame them. It's the easiest thing to go to because it creates access. It creates the bridges, the roads, the digital connectivity. Yes, critical aspects. But can we, at the same time, connect these infrastructure development projects to national developmental goals, national outcomes, whether it is economic growth, GDP development, healthcare access, educational upliftment, things that are going to enhance our lives and the lives of the people that governments have to take care of. So that's one. For the private sector, that includes the tech industry as well. I think it's important to shift from scaling users to scaling outcomes. So what do I mean by that? We are very used to MAUs and DAOs. So monthly active users, daily active users. Sometimes we think about, wow, Facebook has so many billion users. TikTok now has so many billion, not just no longer impressions, but miles and DAOs. Yeah, we celebrate these organizations scaling users. But what if, and we know that they do as well. We know, for example, YouTube has an income sharing scheme that helps influencers earn significant income. Our e-commerce sites, whether it's Shopify or our Facebook Marketplace, even TikTok Shop, for example, can help e-commerce sellers from rural communities grow their monthly incomes and reach out to customers in areas that they've never imagined in the past. So can we scale outcomes and not just think about scaling users? That for the private sector and the tech industry. And now for the user community, I did say I want to bring in that third community. For the user community, can we shift from digital access to digital dividends? So instead of just thinking about consumption, so the good thing about the model of AAU, access, adoption, and use, is nowadays, young people who are digital natives, they know what it's like to actually have access, and they grow up with digital devices. In fact, I was just telling Jennifer that 90% of the audience today are glued to their digital devices. But the question I have is, the user community, how are they using their devices? Is it mostly for consumption, for games, for things that are perhaps to spend money on, to watch video, to entertain themselves? What if we can get that strategic shifts to creation, to production, towards something that can enhance their productivity? So I think of that as from digital access to digital dividends. So I think that's enough for now. If we can achieve through the WSIS+20 process for those strategic shifts, I would honestly be very happy. Thank you.
That's a good way to phrase it, actually, the dividends that we've benefited from. Yeah. We are going to open it up for questions. I know that we have a question online. So why don't we go to that first? And then in the meantime, everybody in the audience can also think of the questions that they want to pose. And then at the end, I'll do one quick round with everybody about what you think people should walk away with. But if I could take the question online, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Michael Pelage. So this question's directed to Akinori, Nico, and Teresa. And I want to expand upon the comments that Akinori had made regarding data accuracy. As a former board member and former chair of the ICANN Data Accuracy Group, I share a lot of his comments or concerns regarding the perception of data accuracy by a number of parties outside of the ICANN community. And Nico, I'm sure you also confirm that this remains a concern within the GAC. I've, in fact, raised this point several times this week. I really would like to applaud the Asia Pacific region. When you look at what the work of the CCTLDs in Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, and China, they are all looking to put in place data accuracy or registrant verification safeguards. And next week at Right 90, there actually is going to be a birds of a feather on KYC of IP registrant information. So here's my specific question. Under the ICANN bylaws, the issue of data accuracy with regard to GTLDs must be resolved within the GNSO. However, as you've heard this week, the contracting parties do not perceive this as a problem, and they do not sit there and view the additional steps as being economically justified. The fact that the contracting parties, because of the bicameral nature of the GNSO, have, if you will, a potential de facto veto on these issues, what does that say for the ICANN multi-stakeholder model when businesses and community members cannot get their concerns addressed? Does that not just drive them to their national governments? So Again, that's my question to Nico, Akinori, and Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I know that we've also had some specific sessions this last week on this topic as well. But Akinori, maybe I start with you and then Nico. And then also just in light of time for the audience in the room, any questions that you might have, please come forward. So Akinori.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael, for the great question. And it's as I was in the session yesterday for the that topic. I mean, and then actually your question is also my question. It is not easy at all. You know, in the national scale, KYC does work because you know, KYC in case of a national scale, it's basically the KYC within that country. But in case of the global arena, especially for the GTLD, KYC is really difficult. And then my understanding is the GNSO still working on that, and then it is taking time, and then still a long way to solve or reach to one solution. So I'm really interested in keeping track of the discussion, and then how ourselves you know, nearing and reaching to the solution, and then that will satisfy the global users of the domain names. Thanks.
Thank you, Akinori. You touched on quite a few things I would have said, so thank you. Nico.
So again, thank you for the question, Michael. That's a very sensitive issue for governments as well. And as a matter of fact, you know, that's going to be one of the topics we're going to be discussing in Prague. And as a matter of fact, before Prague as well, we're going to have some webinars. As you correctly pointed out, you know, there's going to be some way to deal with that without trying to mingle in whatever internal procedures or mechanics the GNSO might or might not have. You know, for us, it's an important and sensitive topic, and we would like to, you know, to deal with the issue as soon as possible. As I said before, we'll have a session in that regard in Prague, and everybody's, you know, you and everybody else, you know, in the room or online are more than welcome to participate, given the fact that, as you already know, GAC sessions are fully open, you know, as compared to 5 or 10 years ago. So so that's all I can say at the moment. Again, it's a sensitive issue, you know, and we need to deal with it as soon as possible. I can only compare it to the SOIs. I don't know if you remember statements of interest, you know, an issue that's been dragging on a little bit longer than expected for us, for the GAC. But again, more than welcome to join us in Prague. Thank you.
I think you've highlighted an example of a challenging and difficult issue, but also the value of everybody coming together and trying to deal with the challenges together. So with that, yes, please introduce yourself, please, and then the question. Thank you.
My name is Alvin Kwan, speaking on personal capacity. So I just want to give a honest comment on APAC participation. In my own observation, APAC people generally don't care so much about the philosophical benefits of so-called multi-stakeholderism. And even within ICANN community, you know, we have a lot of this discussion about WSIS+20. And a couple of days ago in the CPH Summit, we also someone also comment on this. You know, we already support multi-stakeholderism, but what then? You know, what is the action points from the ICANN community? How do we do more than just say we support it? And within APAC region, I think if you look into Southeast Asian countries, their problem on the internet is scam. If you look into Pacific Islands, their problem is access to internet infrastructure issues. So how can multi-stakeholderism actually resolve this problem? Now, if we are not able to kind of talk about how this is able to solve real life problems, my prediction is that the WSIS+20 problem is going to come up on and on again, even if we are able to maintain the multi-stakeholderism within WSIS+20. That might be a WSIS+21 or WSIS+30. It's not going to go away. So how can we have to be able to prove to the APAC region that whatever multi-stakeholderism that we are talking about is able to resolve these issues. And this is, in fact, talking about the governance on the internet issue. We don't have a global coordination on the internet, governance on the internet. So if we are able to talk really specific issues on how multi-stakeholderism works and help them, I think the participation will come because they see benefits in the participation. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Yes, please do.
I want to respond to that and comment that I have a set of lens that uses the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's kind of like a filter. So you know that at the base layer, if you think about the MSM approach as at the base layer, you don't appreciate it until it's taken away. So it's kind of like due process for people in the United States that is taken for granted until it's taken away. And now you're panicking because you no longer have it, or some people no longer have it. And now you're debating and you're quarreling and you're arguing, you're protesting over whether or not that is important. So now that said, until that is taken away, you don't care so much. So now that does not mean that you do not consider the important stuff like scams, like income, like opportunities, like business. These are the higher levels on the hierarchy of needs. So I would say that you cannot use a one size fits all. You have to apply what matters to the people, to the audience, and then bring that to the process. So for those that are not concerned about the MSM model, then sure, let's talk about higher levels. Let's talk about things like fraud protection, like data protection, like income generation. But if you take away that bottom layer, so many things are going to fail.
Thank you. That's those are important observations. It's the theory versus the reality and operations. I know we have Ian in the room. He has his hand up. Edmund, can I just let Ian and then over to you? Ian, please.
Thanks. Sorry, I mean, I'll be quick, and I just wanted to respond to Albin's comment. I mean, I think the internet community, the multi-stakeholder community, doesn't do a particularly good job of showcasing its successes. But I think that's not to say there aren't a lot of them. You know, things like scams have really interesting touch points with the work that's being undertaken around DNS abuse. I can see a lot of the ICANN community have these things top of mind. A lot of the community is thinking about these challenges, but I don't think we're doing a particularly good job of talking the same language. We in some of the internet community talk about things in a certain way, and governments describe things in a different way. And I think through the WSIS process, we need to take a little bit more of a connected up approach to talk the same language and join the dots for governments to help them better understand all the fantastic work that the multi-stakeholder community is doing and leading. And that actually does generate intangible real world outcomes. You know, I think there was a great report that was from I think it was someone out of the UK connecting up IXPs and the proliferation of IXPs from the Internet Governance Forum. You know, that's an example of a multi-stakeholder community driving some tangible outcomes to deliver real-world connectivity benefits. And I think we just need to do a better job at showcasing that self-organizing ability that the multi-stakeholder community has. Thanks.
Ian, I think that's a really, really important reminder. Completely agree. And there's so many cases to showcase around that. Ian, I'm sorry, not Ian, Edmund, I'm sorry, over to you. My apologies.
Edmund from .Asia, and building on what Ian was saying, you know, in terms of reinforcing some of the multi-stakeholder model successes is one of the things that is important coming out of WSIS+20, I believe. But I wanted to pick up on Dan's call for focusing on impact and creativity, creation, production, especially engaging the youth. Because I think a couple of things. One is .Asia ourselves, we have been engaging young people in participation in internet governance for the last 15 years. NetMission is a program that it basically is the longest standing internet governance youth program. And one of the things that I was reminded very forcefully 2 years ago in Brisbane is the youth delegate telling us that, well, you know, nothing for the youth without the youth. So what does that mean? It's about the policies and concepts that we as an older generation really shouldn't be, you know, forcing down to the younger people. So I think that's a very important aspect. And looking at WSIS+20, which is a government-driven kind of process, I hope that, you know, and I agree very much with you, Dan, about the possibilities, but it is about reinforcing, I think, the multi-stakeholder model, for example, in the youth network in the IGF, to allow them to participate in policy development, to allow them to shape the future of the internet. And that's where the beauty of the multi-stakeholder model is, because youth is not only involved in consultation, but involved in agenda setting, consultation, of course, discussion, and decision-making. And that's, you know, a real empowerment. That's what I think I look forward for WSIS+20 to reinforce and to make IGF better, to make the youth voices be able to develop policies that shape the future internet that they love. So I think that's, you know, I really like the way that you shape it. And I think, you know, the reinforcement of the youth network and their agenda setting and the decision-making power is really important for WSIS+20.
Thank you. Yes, Nico.
Can I just say one final thing? And I know we're running out of time and everything, but SOIs, urgent requests, accuracy, you know, MSM and the whole thing doesn't, I mean, they don't mean anything for a Native American tribe in the middle of the jungles of Paraguay or in Alaska or, you know, or in the middle of the Congo or something. So that's why governments are, you know, basically have different priorities, right? I'm not saying, you know, those problems are more or less urgent, right? They're just different. So whenever we address some of these issues in terms of priorities, let's keep in mind that the realities are very different. And in this case, I was referring to the jungles in Paraguay, but for that matter, you know, it could be Siberia or the Pacific Islands or anywhere else. So just keep in mind, you know, the huge difference in terms of priorities for government and for the private sector. Thank you.
I think that's well said. I think that we have come a long way for the internet that we have today, the result of all the work that's gone on to date. And I think we've all benefited from that. Even when we weren't able to travel and be together, we had the opportunity to see new businesses, see new opportunities. And this is not something to take for granted. And as has been identified, there's many new issues to deal with and many new priorities to deal with that are very specific to individuals or regions or cultures. And we need a model that enables us to continue to evolve, to afford the ability that everybody can have the experience online that they want. And for that, we need to work together. So we shouldn't take what we have for granted. I will leave you with a takeaway. If anything you took from this conversation today, what do you want to do and how will you engage with your government, with your business, with your civil society on retaining what we have and evolving it in a way that can scale to the needs that we have on a global level. So instead of asking the panelists, I'm going to have everybody do a little homework and take that away with you. So with that, I know we're at time. So thank you everybody so much for engaging and participating. And Ian for engaging online, really appreciate that. And for any of our remote participants, thank you.
Thank Mr. Swihart and all our panelists. And may I invite you to stay on stage for a photo together. Please stand up to the center of the stage, and Mr. Ian, stay on as well. We're gonna have a photo together. Okay. Hey, let's have a big smile. Oh, we lost Mr. Ian.
Uh-oh.
Okay, he's here. Let's have a photo. Once again, thank you to our moderator and speaker for your insightful discussion, and also to the audience that have an interesting sharing. And now we will have a tea break. And the next section is on expanding trusted notifier network in APAC. We resume at 10:45 a.m. See you then. Thank you, everyone.